this is Larissa Yonke. Welcome to tonight's live stream. I'm really feeling touched right now because I was just pondering on, okay, what do I talk about tonight? I haven't written any notes, and what's the theme? I usually don't do it this way, just spontaneously. And really, what I was sensing in my heart was God wants your yes. And a lot of times, you try to figure it out before saying yes, and it doesn't always work that way. You just have to realize He's good, and He's relentlessly good. And when you do, your life will change. And you'll realize it in hindsight that the time that you said yes to Him, to what He wants you to do, who He wants you to be, that you would do it 100 times over. And it was worth the whole thing. Because God's going to be relentlessly good until you yield to Him. And He'll be relentlessly stubborn. But it's in a good way. Because God's not seeking just His own. Because love doesn't seek its own. He is seeking you. So if you really hear that at a heart level, it'll change your life. And recently there was something, and I'm not even going to get into details, that I had been holding on to this idea for like 16 years. And that was a big chunk of my life, being in my early 20s now. And I just had to release it. It was like, okay, God, all right. It's like, because sometimes we hang on to things that are, quote, good, but aren't best. And when you let go of the things that seem good and you embrace life, that is worth it. Way more than anything else that you could ever imagine. And because the question is not over the right versus wrong, it's more so over what brings life. Because you could stay on that life channel, and that's what you're actually you're gonna see the most peace with. You're gonna see the fruit of the Spirit flowing, which is love, that manifests in peace and joy and patience and kindness and goodness and all the others. And it's not going to be something by your own efforts, because it's the fruit of the Spirit. It's not the works of the Spirit. The contrary list to it is the works of the flesh. And a lot of times people are trying so hard to be nice and to be kind and to do the right thing, yet it's just not working for them. Paul, in Romans, he talked about when he was the guy that was doing what he didn't want to do because the law of sin was working in him. And yet he had this other law at work at him that wanted to do the right thing. It was trying to do the right thing, yet he would always do what he didn't want to do. And even Christians a lot of times live according to that. You got to read the rest of that passage around Romans 6, 7, 8. And Paul got a revelation of Jesus, and he got set free from that. He said, who will deliver me from this body of death? And he said, praise be to God who did it. So read the rest of the passage. Be set free by it. Because Paul was trying by his own efforts to be perfected, and it wasn't working. What God wants is your yes. Because I know the point that my life changed. It was obviously conversion when I was like a little kid. That's a long story in itself. Because I didn't become a Christian in church, but I was around church, but it didn't click for me there. And the turning point for me was on Black Friday 2016 was last year, so it would be 2015. So about a year and a half ago. And a lot of people ask me, well, how'd you do that? It was the complete opposite of how do I. It was more like Jesus. It got simplified down to Jesus. And I understood that as a kid. And even Jesus says that you got to come to Him like a child. Children don't try to figure everything out. They just trust. It's your yes that counts. And at that moment, I called it giving up. And it looks like the end of faith, but it was actually the beginning of it. Because it's not by your own might, it's not by your own power, it's by the Spirit of God within you, right? And when you switch over to that, you realize that you're weak, but He's strong. And out of that, you can do all things. And your own independent ability, you can't. In His, you can. And if you let that sink in, you'll stop trying to do things by your own efforts, by the works of the law. In other words, because even like with the children of Israel, God gave them all these things to do, and they're like, okay, yes, we'll do those. But it was the yes out of their own efforts. It wasn't their yes out of yielding to God. And they're like, okay. So they kind of strong arm try to do it, and they fail and fail and fail and fail. And God delivers them. And God's mercy was great. He did it a lot of times. You read the Old Covenant, like it talks about them going back to idol worship, back to bondage. And so God sent a prophet, and then they got delivered, or the judges, or whoever it was that God used that was willing. And it was the mercy of God. And a lot of people use the terms mercy and grace interchangeably, but they're not the same thing. Mercy is God's kindness despite your imperfection. Grace is what you can walk in even if you're not fallen or falling. Because Jesus walked in grace. He grew in grace. And yet He was perfect. And if you start recognizing that grace is actually the power of God to will and to do through you, you'll start walking differently. Because a lot of times people are afraid of the word grace because they've gotten this idea somehow that people are saying grace is something that it's not. And even a lot of the grace preachers, so to speak, they say, oh, they're given license to sin. If you actually listen to them, the ones that I have aren't. But that's a common accusation. Even Paul anticipated that accusation coming when he was preaching the gospel, which is the grace of Christ. And he said, well, what should we say? Shall we sin all the more? He said, no. If you're dead to sin, why would you live any longer to it? But grace is really God's power through you. And it's a gift. It's not by anything that you labored for, anything that you tried hard to get, or anything like that. But it's very simplistic. It's just Jesus. And Jesus is full of grace and truth. And it's not like a 50-50 mix of 50% truth and 50% grace to keep it balanced. But it's more like 100% of both. Because you need both. And that's what He's like. And when you start walking grace, you'll stop walking in disgrace. And your yes becomes enabled. And that's a beautiful place to be.